There are just too many of them on this flight. It's making me uncomfortable. The words slithered out of Pamela Thornton's mouth like venom delivered in a whisper to the flight attendant standing in the aisle, but loud enough for the black father sitting 2 seats away to hear every single syllable. Sophia Reyes, lead flight attendant for Skyward Airlines Flight 417, felt her blood run cold. She knew exactly what them meant. She had heard that word before, always delivered with the same venomous undertone, always accompanied by the same sweeping gesture that Pamela was now making with her perfectly manicured hand. The gesture encompassed the family across the aisle. A mother, a father, 2 small children dressed in matching Christmas sweaters. It encompassed the group of young black men a few rows up, laughing and settling into their seats, clearly excited about their holiday trip. And it encompassed the father and daughter sitting directly beside Pamela in seats 14A and 14B, Jerome and Jasmine Carter, a software engineer taking his 13-year-old daughter to Chicago to spend Christmas with her grandmother. Pamela's face was a mask of manufactured concern, but her eyes were cold, calculating. She leaned further into the aisle, creating a conspiratorial bubble of space between herself and Sophia, as if she were sharing a perfectly reasonable observation rather than something that would change the trajectory of the next several hours. "It feels unsafe," Pamela continued, her voice dropping even lower. "This is a security risk. You need to move me to first class, as compensation." Sophia's training kicked in. "De-escalate. Clarify. Do not engage." But her hands were trembling slightly as she processed what she had just heard. In 11 years of flying, she had encountered difficult passengers before. She had dealt with drunk businessmen, anxious flyers, screaming children, and entitled celebrities. But this was different. This was hatred distilled into a whisper. What Pamela Thornton did not know, what she could not possibly have imagined in her wildest nightmares, was what was about to happen next. She never expected the cockpit door to open. She never expected the pilot to step out. And she certainly never expected Captain Darnell Brooks, a decorated Air Force veteran with 4 gold stripes on his shoulders and 18 years of experience with Skyward Airlines, to be walking directly toward her seat. Captain Darnell Brooks, whose skin was the exact same color as the passengers Pamela Thornton was complaining about. Before we dive into this story, tell me, where are you watching from? Comment your city below. And if you believe that karma always finds its way, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Because what happens in the next 15 minutes will stay with you forever. This is not just a story about a racist remark. This is a story about justice, about dignity, and about the moment when one man's quiet strength dismantled a lifetime of entitlement at 30,000 feet. Now, let us rewind to how this moment started. December 22nd, 2 days before Christmas. LaGuardia Airport was a symphony of chaos. Holiday travelers streamed through the terminals in waves, their arms laden with shopping bags and wrapped presents, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. Children darted between legs, pointing at the massive Christmas tree near the security checkpoint. Couples held hands. Grandparents shuffled toward their gates, eager to see family they had not embraced in months. The air itself seemed to shimmer with something intangible. Hope, perhaps. Or joy. The kind of collective emotional frequency that only exists during the holidays, when even the most cynical among us allows themselves to believe just for a moment in the magic of human connection. But Pamela Thornton felt none of it. She stood near gate B-22, her sharp navy blue suit immaculate, her heels polished to a mirror, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her mood. She checked her watch, a rose gold piece that cost more than most people's monthly rent, for the 10th time in 5 minutes. 11:42 a.m. Boarding was supposed to start at 11:45. Any delay, even a minor one, felt like a personal affront. A conspiracy by the universe to derail her carefully constructed plans. Today was not just a day. It was the day. In precisely 4 hours, Pamela Thornton was scheduled to walk into the sleek, intimidatingly minimalist Chicago offices of Meridian Holdings for a final round interview. This was not just any interview, any. It was for the Vice President of Strategic Marketing, a position that came with a $350,000 salary, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of respect that Pamela had been clawing toward her entire career. It was the job that would finally make her ex-husband, Nathan, stop with his patronizing texts. Just checking in, Pam. Hope you are doing okay. As if she were the one who had peaked in college. As if she were the one who needed to be pitied. She would show him. She would show all of them. Pamela clutched her leather briefcase, a stiff $800 designer piece that held her meticulously printed presentation, her portfolio, and a bottle of anxiety medication she only ever used for critical flights. This, she had decided that morning as she packed, was a critical flight. She had almost thrown a fit when her current employer, a mid-level marketing firm called Vertex Media Group, had booked her an economy. It is a short-haul flight, Pamela, her boss Greg, had said, completely oblivious to the nuance of the situation. Policy is policy. Policy. The word made her seethe even now, standing in the gate area, surrounded by what she considered to be the unwashed masses. Policy was for people who did not matter. Policy was for people who did not have corner offices in their future. After today, she would be the one making the policy. She would have an expense account that did not require itemized receipts for a $7 latte. She would fly first class always. The gate area was a microcosm of everything she was trying to escape. It was a sea of mediocrity, at least in her mind. People in sweatpants. People eating greasy pizza from cardboard boxes. People letting their children run wild, their laughter echoing off the walls like an assault on her concentration. She felt above it all. Separate, superior. A ripple of laughter cut through her internal monologue, and Pamela looked up, her gaze laser-focusing on the source of the disruption. It was a family standing near the windows. A man and a teenage girl, probably father and daughter. They were black. The man was well-dressed in a polo shirt and pressed slacks, and the girl was deeply absorbed in her phone, but she had just shown him something, a video perhaps, and his deep rumbling laugh was to Pamela's ears offensively loud. Pamela rolled her eyes, a sharp theatrical gesture that she made no effort to hide. Of course, she thought. Some people just had no concept of public decorum, no awareness of the people around them trying to concentrate. She watched the man Jerome ruffle his daughter Jasmine's hair. It was a gesture of such simple, uncomplicated affection that it somehow made Pamela's annoyance curdle into something sharper, something uglier. Near the jet bridge, a pilot emerged from the staff entrance, walking toward the gate with the easy confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform impeccable. 4 gold stripes gleamed on his epaulets, marking him as a captain. Passengers smiled at him as he passed. A little boy waved, and the pilot waved back, a warm smile crossing his face. Pamela did not notice him. She was too busy being disgusted by the crowd. Pamela Thornton had always believed that she was destined for more. Growing up in a small town in Connecticut, she had watched her parents struggle with their modest, middle-class existence, always one unexpected expense away from disaster. Her mother worked as a secretary. Her father managed a hardware store. They were good people, decent people, but they had accepted their lot in life with a resignation that Pamela found suffocating. She had sworn even as a teenager that she would be different. She would climb. She would achieve. She would become someone that people looked up to, someone who commanded respect simply by walking into a room. And she had done it. Sort of. At 44, Pamela was the senior marketing director at Vertex Media Group, a respectable if not prestigious position at a respectable if not prestigious company. She made good money. She had a nice apartment in Manhattan. She wore designer clothes and ate at restaurants where the waiters remembered her name. But it was not enough. It was never enough. The divorce from Nathan 3 years ago had shattered something inside her. Not her heart, she had stopped loving him long before the papers were signed, but her pride. Nathan had been the one to leave. Nathan had been the one to say, with that infuriating calm he always had, "I just do not think you are happy, Pam. I do not think you have ever been happy." The words had haunted her ever since, not because they were cruel, but because some small, terrified part of her suspected they might be true. Now, standing in the LaGuardia Gate area, Pamela pushed those thoughts aside and focused on what mattered: the interview, the job, the validation. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her presentation notes for the 100th time. Synergistic growth, brand optimization, omni-channel market penetration. The words were her armor, her shield against the chaos of the world around her. She glanced up and saw the family near the windows again. Jerome and Jasmine Carter, though she did not know their names. The father was showing his daughter something on his phone now, and they were both smiling that warm, comfortable smile that comes from genuine connection. Pamela felt a flicker of something she could not quite name. Envy, perhaps, or resentment. She and Nathan had never had children, a decision they had made together, but that she sometimes regretted in her darker moments. Looking at that father and daughter so clearly content in each other's company made her feel somehow diminished. She looked away, her jaw tightening. Across the gate area, she spotted more of them. Black passengers, a family with 2 small children, the mother trying to wrangle a toddler who wanted to run. A group of young men, probably college students, laughing and roughhousing in that way young men do. An elderly couple holding hands, their gray hair a testament to decades together. Pamela's mind, already primed for grievance, began to build a case. It was not one thing, she told herself. It was the cumulative effect, the vibe, the noise, the demographic. It just felt wrong to her. It was not what she was used to. It was not the sterile, quiet environment she had come to associate with professional travel. This was not a flight to Chicago, she thought with a curl of her lip. It felt like a bus. She needed to fix this. Skyward Airlines is pleased to announce the boarding of Flight 41 with service to Chicago O'Hare. The announcement crackled over the intercom, and Pamela was on her feet before the gate agent had finished speaking. "We will now begin pre-boarding for our military personnel families with young children and those needing special assistance." Pamela tensed, gathering her things with barely contained impatience. She was Group 1 priority access, the result of her frequent flyer status with Skyward Airlines. But even that small privilege came with the indignity of waiting. She watched with thinly veiled disgust as passengers began to file toward the jet bridge. A woman with a service dog, a poorly groomed poodle in a vest that Pamela was certain was fake, an elderly man in a wheelchair being pushed by his weary-looking wife, a young mother struggling with a car seat and a diaper bag, and a toddler who clearly did not want to be on an airplane. The world, Pamela felt, was disintegrating into chaos. "We now invite our Group 1 passengers to board." Pamela was the third person to scan her boarding pass, shouldering past a young man in a hoodie who had the audacity to be standing in her way. "Hey, watch it," he called after her, but she summarily ignored him. People like him were background noise, irrelevant. The flight attendant at the aircraft door, a woman with Sophia on her name tag and a bright, practiced smile, greeted her warmly. "Welcome aboard. Happy holidays." Pamela grunted in response, already scanning the overhead bins, calculating planning. Her seat was 14C an aisle. She had paid the $45 upgrade fee for it, which she considered highway robbery, but also a necessary investment in her sanity. She could not sit in a middle seat. She could not be trapped between 2 strangers for 2.5 hours. The thought alone made her skin crawl. She found her row and stowed her small roller bag in the overhead bin with practiced aggressive efficiency, taking up slightly more space than she strictly needed. Then she slid into her seat and immediately pulled out her laptop, balancing it on her knees. Time to review her talking points one more time. The cattle call of boarding continued around her, but she was determined to ignore it. The plane slowly filled. She was dimly, irritably aware of the stream of people shuffling past their bags, knocking her shoulder, their mumbled apologies inadequate. The noise level rose steadily, a cacophony of rustling jackets and clicking seatbelts, and the high-pitched voices of children who should have been sedated or left at home. She was deep in a slide deck about Q3 projections when a shadow fell over her laptop screen. "Excuse us." Pamela looked up and her heart sank into the pit of her stomach. It was them, the laughing man and his daughter from the gate, Jerome and Jasmine Carter. Their seat assignments displayed on their phones were 14A and 14B, the window and the middle, right next to her. "You have got to be kidding me." Pamela muttered the words loud enough for them to hear, making no effort to hide her displeasure. Jerome, holding his carry-on bag, just offered a tight, polite smile. The kind of smile that said he had heard worse and learned long ago not to let it show. "Sorry," he said, his voice calm and measured. "Just need to get in." With a sigh so heavy it was practically a structural component of the aircraft, Pamela unplugged her laptop, gathered her things, and stood up in the aisle. She pressed herself against the opposite seat row to let them pass, watching with barely concealed annoyance as they settled into their seats. The rustle of their jackets, the click of their seatbelts, the zip of a backpack as Jasmine pulled out a set of earbuds. It all felt to Pamela like a performance of her personal inconvenience. Jerome helped his daughter get situated, adjusting her neck pillow and making sure she had everything she needed. "You okay, baby?" he asked softly. "I am fine, Dad." Jasmine rolled her eyes in that way teenagers do, but there was affection beneath it. "Stop hovering. I am your father. Hovering is in the job description." Jasmine laughed, a light, genuine sound, and leaned her head on his shoulder. She put in her earbuds and closed her eyes, already tuning out the world. Pamela watched this exchange with something approaching revulsion. The easy intimacy between them, the unspoken love that required no grand gestures, just small moments of connection. It made her uncomfortable in a way she could not quite articulate. She sat back down in her aisle seat, her entire body rigid with tension. She was now trapped, pinned against the aisle by a teenager in the middle seat. She could not work. She could not think. She could not even stretch her legs without bumping into someone. She tried to open her laptop again, but her elbow kept bumping Jasmine's arm. The girl did not seem to notice, lost in whatever music was playing in her ears. But Pamela noticed. Every accidental touch felt like an invasion. This was impossible. She looked around the cabin, her frustration mounting with every passing second. Across the aisle, another black family was settling in. A mother and father, 2 small children. The kids were already arguing about who got the window seat, their voices high and piercing. A few rows up, a group of young black men, probably in their early 20s, were laughing and stowing their bags. They were clearly excited about something, their energy infectious, their voices loud. One of them was wearing a college sweatshirt. Another had headphones around his neck, the bass of his music faintly audible even from here. Pamela's mind, already primed for grievance, began to build a case. It was not one thing, she told herself. It was the cumulative effect. It was the vibe, the noise, the demographic. It just felt wrong to her. It was not what she was used to. It was not the sterile, quiet environment she had come to associate with professional travel. This was not a flight to Chicago, she thought, with a curl of her lip. It felt like a bus. She needed to fix this. Sophia Reyes, the lead flight attendant, was working her way down the aisle doing the final compliance checks. She moved with practiced efficiency, her smile warm and professional, her voice patient as she reminded passengers to stow their bags and buckle their seatbelts. Sophia was 34 years old, a single mother of 2, and she had been flying for 11 years. She loved her job most of the time. She loved the travel, the variety, the feeling of being part of something bigger than herself. But holidays were exhausting. Double shifts, cranky passengers, delays, cancellations. She was running on 3 hours of sleep and a stale airport pretzel, and her smile was a feat of engineering held in place by sheer force of will. "I will need you to put that laptop away for takeoff," she said to Pamela, her voice practiced and pleasant. "All electronic devices need to be stowed or in airplane mode." Pamela looked up and Sophia recognized the type instantly. The diamond-hard scowl, the air of someone who believed the rules of physics and the FAA bent to their will, the barely concealed contempt for anyone in a service position. In a moment, Pamela said, not moving to comply, "I am in the middle of something important. I understand, but we are actually at the end of the boarding process. I need it stowed now, please, under the seat in front of you." The please was doing heavy lifting in that sentence. Pamela let out another one of her weaponized sighs and began the slow, dramatic process of shutting down her computer. But as she bent over to slide it under the seat, she paused. She looked at Sophia, then leaned into the aisle, creating a conspiratorial bubble of space between them. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. Sophia paused, bracing herself. This was usually the moment a passenger asked for a free drink, complained about the seat width, or tried to explain why their oversized carry-on absolutely had to stay at their feet. "Yes. Can I help you? I have a problem." Pamela's eyes flicked nervously toward Jasmine in the middle seat, who was oblivious to everything, her music playing, her eyes closed. Then her gaze swept across the aisle, taking in the family with the 2 small children, the young men a few rows up, the elderly black couple near the back. "I am a very frequent flyer with Skyward, Pamela," said her voice, dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "Top tier. And I cannot sit here." Sophia felt her stomach tighten. She had a feeling she knew where this was going, but training required her to clarify rather than assume. "I am sorry," she said, keeping her voice professionally neutral. "The flight is completely full. We are in the process of closing the door. I am afraid I cannot move anyone at this point." "No, you do not understand." Pamela's voice dropped even lower. She was leaning so far into the aisle now that other passengers had to shimmy around her to get to their seats. "It is not about the seat. It is about the situation." "The situation," Sophia repeated. Pamela's face contorted with frustration as if she could not believe she had to spell this out. "Just look around," she whispered. "There are just too many of them. The black people." She said the words with a venomous precision that made Sophia's skin crawl. "It is making me uncomfortable. It feels unsafe. This is a security risk. You need to move me to first class, as compensation for this environment." For a full 3 seconds, Sophia Reyes did not breathe. The roar of the engines powering up, the click of overhead bins being closed, the murmur of the cabin as passengers settled in for the flight. It all faded into a dull, high-pitched ringing in her ears. She had heard racist remarks before. Anyone who worked in customer service for long enough had stories. But there was something about the casualness of this one, the absolute confidence with which Pamela had delivered it, that made Sophia's blood run cold. Jerome Carter in seat 14A had not been asleep. He had been resting his eyes, letting the chaos of boarding wash over him while he waited for the flight to begin. But he had heard every single word. His body went rigid. His daughter was still resting against his shoulder, oblivious to the venom being spewed just inches away. His first instinct was a protective paternal rage so potent it made his hands shake. He wanted to stand up and yell. He wanted to demand that this woman look him in the eye and repeat what she had just said. But Jerome Carter was a 42-year-old black man on an airplane, and he knew with the bone-deep certainty that comes from a lifetime of experience that any confrontation would end badly for him. Not for her. For him. So he stayed very, very still, his heart hammering against his ribs. In seat 15C, directly behind Pamela, Tyler Morrison had also heard everything. He was 26 years old, a graphic designer from Brooklyn, and he had been idly scrolling through social media when Pamela's venomous whisper cut right through his music. He looked up, disbelieving. He saw the woman's pinched, pale face. He saw the flight attendant's frozen expression. Slowly, carefully, Tyler angled his phone. He propped it against his knee, his thumb hovering over the record button. He was not technically filming yet, but he was ready. Sophia finally found her voice. It was clipped cold, and all traces of the airline's forced pleasantry had vanished. "What you have just said is not only inappropriate, it is discriminatory. I am not moving you." Pamela's face flushed with indignation. "What? How dare you? I am a paying customer. I am expressing a valid concern. I will have your job for this." Her voice rose loud enough now for the passengers in the surrounding rows to hear. "Get me your supervisor. Now. I am the lead flight attendant for this cabin." Sophia said, her own voice rising just enough to be audible to those nearby. "And, per Skyward Airlines policy and federal regulations, I am required to report any incident that creates a hostile or discriminatory environment." "This is unbelievable." Pamela's voice dripped with outrage. "You are discriminating against me for having a feeling. I demand to speak to the pilot." Something shifted in Sophia's expression. A hardness entered her eyes. "Stay right here. You will get your wish." Sophia did not walk to the front of the plane. She strode. Her movements were sharp and purposeful, her face a thundercloud of barely contained fury. She bypassed the forward galley and went straight to the cockpit, punching in the keypad code for the reinforced door. She slipped inside and the door clicked shut behind her. The cabin fell into a confused, murmuring silence. Passengers exchanged glances. Something was clearly happening, though most of them did not know what. Pamela, in seat 14C, crossed her arms and settled back with a self-satisfied, aggrieved look on her face. "See?" she muttered loud enough for Jerome to hear. "Now we will get some service." Jerome said nothing. He just gently squeezed his daughter's hand, waking her from her half-doze. Jasmine stirred, pulling off her headphones. "What is going on, Dad?" "Just stay quiet, baby," Jerome murmured, his eyes fixed on the front of the plane on the closed cockpit door. "There is a situation." Tyler Morrison, in seat 15C, pressed the record button on his phone. The red light began to glow. Inside the cockpit, Captain Darnell Brooks and First Officer Kevin Walsh were running through the final items on their pre-flight checklist. Flaps set. Takeoff data confirmed Kevin was saying his voice professional and focused. He was 31 years old, relatively new to the first officer position, and he took his job seriously. He admired Captain Brooks, had heard stories about his Air Force career, his 18 years with Skyward, his reputation as one of the calmest, most competent pilots in the fleet. The cockpit door opened and both men looked up. Sophia Reyes stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling with barely contained emotion. The Sophia that Captain Brooks knew, the consummate professional who had flown hundreds of flights with him, who never let anything rattle her, was nowhere to be seen. In her place was a woman on the verge of either tears or rage. "Captain," she said, her voice cracking. "We have a situation." Darnell Brooks set down his checklist, giving her his full attention. He was a man in his late 40s, with the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. His uniform was impeccable, the 4 gold stripes on his epaulets gleaming under the cockpit lights. His face was calm, composed, but his eyes were sharp. "Sophia, what is wrong?" he asked, his deep baritone voice a stark contrast to her agitation. "You are white as a sheet." "We have a passenger." Sophia began, the words tumbling out of her. "Seat 14C. A woman. She is refusing to sit in her assigned seat. She is demanding to be moved to first class because she says." Sophia took a shaky breath. "She says she is uncomfortable with the demographic on the flight." The word hung in the air. Demographic. Captain Brooks' eyes narrowed. Define demographic. Sophia looked at him, her face a mixture of anger and apology. She said, "And this is a direct quote, Captain. There are just too many black people on this flight. She said it is a security risk. She wants to be moved as compensation." The cockpit went utterly, profoundly silent. Kevin Walsh stared at his instruments, his face pale, his hands frozen on the controls. He did not know what to say. He had never encountered anything like this in his career, and he found himself looking to Captain Brooks for guidance. Darnell Brooks' expression did not change. He did not yell. He did not slam his fist. He simply sat very still for a long moment, processing what he had just heard. Then slowly, deliberately, he placed his checklist on the console. He unclipped his seatbelt. The slow, heavy click echoed in the small space like a gunshot. Captain Kevin's voice cracked. "What are we calling security?" "Not yet." Darnell said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I will handle this personally." Captain Sophia said, her voice trembling. "She is awful. She demanded to speak to the pilot. She has no idea who you are. I am aware." Darnell stood up to his full height, 6'3", ducking slightly to fit in the low ceiling space of the cockpit. He adjusted his uniform jacket, pulling the sleeves down with a sharp, precise tug. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. "Kevin," he said, "hold the before takeoff checklist. Inform the tower we are holding at the gate for a passenger-related incident. Do not, under any circumstances, close that cabin door." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," Kevin said, already reaching for the radio. Darnell Brooks pushed open the cockpit door and stepped out into the cabin. The effect on the cabin was instantaneous. A pilot never comes out, not unless there is a serious problem, not unless something has gone catastrophically wrong. The passengers knew this instinctively, even if they had never consciously thought about it. The sight of a captain emerging from the cockpit during boarding was enough to silence every conversation, to freeze every movement. Captain Darnell Brooks stood at the front of the first-class cabin for a moment, surveying the plane. His gaze swept over the rows, taking in the faces of the passengers, the overhead bins, the flight attendants frozen in their positions. He was not just a man in a uniform. He was the pilot in command, the final absolute authority on this aircraft, and his entire bearing radiated that authority. As he stood there, memories flickered through his mind. Moments from his past that had shaped him, that had made him the man he was today. He was 22 years old, fresh out of the Air Force Academy, the only black pilot in his entire squadron. He remembered the commanding officer who had pulled him aside after a particularly impressive training exercise and said with a smile that was supposed to be friendly, "Brooks, you fly well for someone like you." The words had been delivered like a compliment. They had cut like a knife. He was 32 years old, a first officer at a regional airline applying for captain for the third time. 3 times he had been passed over. 3 times they had told him, "It is not about race, Darnell, it is about seniority." But the white pilot who was promoted ahead of him had 200 fewer flight hours and 3 more incidents on his record. He was 38 years old, a captain at Skyward Airlines, settling into the cockpit before a flight from Dallas to New York. A first-class passenger had flagged down a flight attendant and asked in a stage whisper that carried through the open cockpit door, "Excuse me, is there a real pilot available?" Darnell had smiled at that one. He had not said anything. He had just flown the smoothest landing of his entire career, feathering the wheels onto the runway so gently that the passengers did not even feel the moment of contact. When the first-class passenger disembarked, Darnell had been standing at the cockpit door. "Have a nice day, sir," he had said, his smile wide and genuine. "Thank you for flying with us." The man had not been able to meet his eyes. Now, at 48 years old, standing in his own aircraft, wearing the 4 stripes he had earned through decades of excellence, a passenger was calling people who looked like him a security risk. Not this time. Captain Darnell Brooks began to walk down the aisle. His footsteps were slow measured. The sound of his polished black shoes was a funeral drumbeat on the thin carpet of the aisle. He walked past first class. He walked past the Comfort Plus rows. Every head turned as he passed. Every eye followed him. The cabin was utterly silent. No one dared to speak. No one dared to move. He walked and walked until he arrived at row 14. Pamela Thornton, who had been expecting a supervisor named Gary or Steve, someone she could bully and belittle and bend to her will, looked up. Her mouth fell open. She saw the 4 gold stripes on his epaulets. She saw the wings on his chest. She saw the imposing professional figure standing before her. And then, with a jolt of cognitive dissonance so strong it made her stomach lurch, she saw that the captain was black. Captain Darnell Brooks stopped standing directly parallel to seat 14C. He did not address Pamela. He did not even look at her. Not yet. Instead, he turned his body slightly and looked at Sophia, who had followed him down the aisle and was now standing just behind him. "Miss Reyes," he said, his voice not loud but carrying with absolute clarity in the tomb-like silence of the cabin. "Please repeat for my benefit the nature of the passenger's complaint." Sophia Reyes stood tall. Whatever fear or hesitation she had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a cold, professional determination. "Yes, Captain," she said. Her voice was clear and steady. "The passenger in seat 14C. Miss Pamela Thornton, she had gotten the name from the flight manifest, has stated that she is uncomfortable and feels unsafe due to the demographic on this flight. She has requested to be moved to first class because there are, and I quote, too many black people on board. She characterized this as a security risk. The words hung in the air like smoke, dense and toxic. A collective gasp rippled through the rows. Passengers who had not heard the initial exchange now understood exactly what was happening. The murmurs that had been confused became outraged. "Oh my God, did she really say that? Are you serious?" Phones that had been discreetly hidden were now being openly raised. Tyler Morrison in seat 15C had his camera perfectly focused on the back of Pamela's head, capturing everything. The red recording light glowed like an accusation. Elena Gutierrez, an elderly Hispanic woman sitting in row 18, crossed herself and muttered something under her breath in Spanish. Connor Bradley, a businessman in row 12 who had been annoyed about the boarding delay, now sat forward in his seat, his jaw tight with anger. And Jerome Carter, sitting just 2 seats away from Pamela, sat absolutely still. His daughter Jasmine was awake now, watching everything with wide, confused eyes. Jerome's hand rested on hers, protective, reassuring. Now and only now did Captain Darnell Brooks turn his head. He fixed his gaze on Pamela Thornton. It was not a gaze of anger. It was worse. It was a gaze of profound, weary, and surgical disappointment. The kind of look a parent might give a child who has just done something inexcusably foolish. Pamela's face, which had been flushed with indignation, went white. She stammered. "That is not. I was speaking in confidence. It was just a concern. I am a high-value customer. Captain Brooks held up a single gloved hand. Pamela's words died in her throat. His voice was low, a deep, resonant baritone that carried to every corner of the cabin. He did not need to raise it. The silence was so complete that he could have whispered and been heard. "My name is Captain Darnell Brooks. I am the pilot in command of this Skyward Airlines flight, and on my aircraft there is no high-value passenger." He paused, letting the words sink in. "There are only passengers, human beings traveling from one place to another. And there is no confidence when it comes to bigotry." He let that last word hang in the air. Bigotry. It was a word that carried weight. A word that could not be softened or explained away. "You have stated," he continued, "that you feel unsafe. Let me be absolutely clear about the security environment on this aircraft." He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping across the cabin. I am responsible for the safety of every single soul on board this plane. That responsibility is not something I take lightly. It is the reason I spent 15 years in the United States Air Force. It is the reason I have dedicated my career to this profession. And it is the reason I am standing here right now addressing you directly. His eyes returned to Pamela. The family you are sitting next to. He nodded toward Jerome and Jasmine with immaculate respect. Sir. Miss. Jerome nodded back, his face a mask of stone. Jasmine sat very still, her eyes never leaving the captain. They are my passengers, Captain Brooks continued. Their safety is my responsibility. The other families on this flight. The young men in row 10. The couple in row 22. Every single person in this cabin who shares my skin color and who you have just characterized as a security risk, they are my passengers. Their safety is my responsibility. He took a step closer to Pamela. My crew, he said, his voice dropping slightly. The flight attendants who have served you, who have done nothing but try to ensure your comfort, who you have disrespected and demanded comply with your prejudice, they are my crew. Their well-being is my responsibility. Another step. And me. He tapped his own chest right over the pilot's wings pinned to his uniform. Is my presence on this flight a security risk to you? The question hung in the air like a challenge, like a thrown gauntlet. Pamela's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like a fish that had been yanked from the water, gasping for air that would not come. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10. The only sound was the distant hum of the auxiliary power unit and the soft whir of the ventilation system. Then Pamela did what cornered animals do. She attacked. This is ridiculous. She shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation and rage. This is reverse discrimination. You are all ganging up on me. I will have your job. I will sue this airline. What is your name? Her voice rose to a pitch that made several passengers wince. Cole. I will have your badge. The threat so potent in her mind evaporated in the pressurized cabin air. Captain Darnell Brooks did not even blink. My name, he said, his voice utterly calm, is Captain Darnell Brooks, and I will be flying this aircraft to Chicago today. He paused. You will not. The finality of the statement was absolute. There was no room for negotiation, no opening for argument. It was simply a fact delivered with the same certainty as the laws of physics. You have, in a matter of minutes, violated federal aviation regulations. He continued, shifting into a new, even colder, more official tone. You have failed to follow the instructions of a flight crew member. You have, by your own admission, created a hostile, discriminatory environment that interferes with the duties of my crew and the comfort and safety of all other passengers. He let each accusation land like a hammer blow. You are, by definition, a security risk. Not the families you complained about. Not my crew. You. He turned his head slightly. Miss Reyes, call the gate. Have airport security and a gate supervisor meet us at the jet bridge. This passenger is being deplaned. The word deplaned echoed through the cabin like a gavel striking. You cannot do this, Pamela screamed, finally finding her full volume. Her face was blotchy now, tears of rage beginning to streak her carefully applied makeup. I have a meeting. It is the most important meeting of my life. You do not know what you are doing. I will. On the contrary. Captain Brooks was already turning to walk away. He did not look back. His voice was calm, professional, final. I know exactly what I am doing. I am ensuring the safety of my flight. Pamela Thornton demanded to speak to the pilot. She got her wish. And now, in front of a cabin full of witnesses and recording phones, she was about to learn that karma does not wait. Captain Darnell Brooks walked back to the front of the plane with the same measured, deliberate pace that had carried him down the aisle. He paused briefly at the forward galley, speaking quietly to the gate agents who had appeared at the still-open aircraft door, then disappeared back into the cockpit. The door clicked shut behind him. For 30 seconds, nobody in the cabin moved. The only sound was Pamela Thornton's ragged, high-pitched breathing. She sat frozen in her seat, her designer briefcase clutched to her chest like a shield, her face a ruin of smeared mascara and blotchy, furious red. Her entire body was trembling, whether from rage or fear or humiliation even, she could not tell anymore. The world had tilted on its axis. The script she had been following her entire life, the one where she was always right, always justified, always in control, had been ripped away. She looked at Jerome Carter. He stared back at her, his expression unreadable. There was no anger in his eyes, which was somehow more damning than rage. There was only a kind of weary recognition, the look of someone who had seen this scenario play out too many times before. She looked at Jasmine. The 13-year-old was watching her with a teenager's purest, most withering contempt. It was the look of someone who had just witnessed something small and ugly and was filing it away as a permanent memory. "Well?" Pamela snapped at the cabin at large, her voice shrill and defensive. "What are you all staring at? This is a violation of my rights." "This is..." She never finished the sentence. Because that is when it happened. In row 18, Elena Gutierrez slowly lifted her weathered hands. Clap. The sound was startling in the silence. Clap. She was 67 years old, a grandmother of 5, a woman who had spent her entire life working quietly, raising her family, never making a fuss. But she had heard what Pamela said. She had watched the captain's response. And something inside her, something that had been dormant for too long, demanded to be expressed. Clap. The man next to her, a middle-aged salesman from Detroit who had been dreading his flight home, joined in. Then the family across the aisle, the mother, the father, the 2 small children who did not fully understand what was happening but knew that clapping was good. Connor Bradley, the businessman in row 12, rose to his feet. "And stay off!" he shouted. Within 10 seconds, the entire cabin erupted. It was spontaneous and thunderous, a wave of sound that rolled from the front of the plane to the back and back again. Passengers who had been silent witnesses became active participants. People who did not know each other were looking at each other with shared understanding, shared relief, shared celebration. The applause was judgment. It was vindication. It was a deafening, unanimous rejection of everything Pamela Thornton represented. "Shut up!" Pamela screamed, her voice cracking. "Shut up, all of you!" But the applause only grew louder. 2 formidable figures appeared at the end of the aisle. Airport security officers, broad-shouldered and impassive, followed by Brenda Mitchell, the gate supervisor, a woman in her late 50s with a stiff blonde helmet of hair and a name tag that read, 20 years of service. "We need you to gather your belongings and come with us. Now." The first officer said, his hand resting on his belt, his voice flat and professional. "I am not going anywhere." Pamela's voice was raw now, stripped of all pretense of dignity. "I paid for this flight. I have rights. You can come with us voluntarily, or we can remove you. The choice is yours." The applause had died down now, replaced by a charged, expectant silence. Every eye in the cabin was on Pamela. She looked around desperately, seeking an ally, a sympathetic face, anyone who might validate her outrage. There was no one. Finally, the fight went out of her. Her shoulders slumped. The tears that had been threatening finally spilled over, streaking her carefully applied makeup into ugly rivers down her cheeks. She stood up. Pamela fumbled with the overhead bin, her hands shaking so badly that she could barely grip the handle of her roller bag. When she finally pulled it free, it slipped from her grasp and slammed into the aisle with a loud, graceless crash. She grabbed her designer briefcase, the one that held the presentation that was supposed to change her life, and clutched it to her chest. Then she began to walk. The aisle seemed to stretch forever. Every row she passed was lined with faces, some angry, some satisfied, some simply curious. No one would meet her eyes. They just watched. silent witnesses to her humiliation. Tyler Morrison, in seat 15C, filmed it all. He captured her tear-streaked, mascara-ruined face. He captured her stumbling over her own bag. He captured the moment she passed row 14, refusing to look at Jerome and Jasmine Carter. The security officers flanked her, not touching, but clearly ready to intervene if she made any sudden moves. Brenda Mitchell walked behind them, her face a fortress of professional neutrality. As Pamela reached the front of the plane, the applause started again. It was not triumphant this time. It was quieter, more solemn, a collective exhale of relief that justice had been served. She stepped onto the jet bridge, and the moment her foot crossed the threshold, the aircraft door was sealed behind her. The sound of the latch engaging was like the sound of a guillotine dropping. Inside the cabin, Captain Darnell Brooks' voice came over the PA system, calm and reassuring, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for the short delay this afternoon. We had to deplane a passenger who was unable to comply with our standards of basic human decency. We are grateful for your patience and cooperation. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for departure." The cabin broke into applause for the third time. This time it was pure joy. After the plane door closed and the applause had faded after the flight attendants had begun their final preparations, and the captain had announced that they would be pushing back from the gate. Momentarily, Jerome Carter finally allowed himself to breathe. He had been holding tension in his shoulders and his jaw, in every muscle of his body, for what felt like hours. Now, with the immediate threat removed, he felt that tension begin to release. Jasmine looked at him, her young face troubled. "Dad," she said softly, "what just happened? Why did that lady say those things?" Jerome took a moment before answering. This was one of those parenting moments he had always dreaded, the moment when he would have to explain to his daughter that the world was not always fair, that some people would judge her before they knew her, that the color of her skin would in some eyes always make her suspect. That woman, he said carefully, said something hateful, something ignorant. She looked at the people on this plane, people who look like us, and she decided we were dangerous. Not because of anything we did, just because of who we are. Jasmine was quiet for a moment, processing. "That is really stupid," she said finally. Despite everything, Jerome laughed. It was a small, surprised laugh, but genuine. "Yeah, baby, it really is." "But the captain?" Jasmine continued, her eyes brightening. He stood up to her. He did not yell or anything. He was just calm and strong. He was. "I want to be like him when I grow up," Jasmine said. "Calm like that. Strong like that." Jerome pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. "You already are, baby. You already are." Sophia Reyes appeared at their row, pausing in her pre-departure duties. Her eyes were still a little glassy, the aftermath of the adrenaline and emotion of the past 15 minutes. "Sir," she said softly, "I am so sorry you had to experience that." Jerome shook his head. "Do not apologize. You did everything right. You stood your ground. And your captain." He trailed off, not quite sure how to finish the sentence. Sophia smiled, a real smile this time, not the professional one she wore for passengers. "He is a good man," she said simply. "One of the best. Tell him thank you. From both of us." "I will." She moved on down the aisle, and Jerome looked out the window. The gate was receding as the plane began to push back. Christmas lights twinkled in the terminal windows, red and green and gold. It was December 22nd, 2 days before Christmas, and despite everything that had just happened, Jerome felt something he had not expected. "Hope." "Dad," Jasmine said. "Yeah, baby. Can we get hot chocolate when we land? Grandma always makes hot chocolate." Jerome smiled. "Yeah, baby. We can definitely get hot chocolate." The engines hummed to life. The plane began to taxi toward the runway, and Skyward Airlines Flight 4117, carrying 147 passengers and a crew that had just demonstrated what integrity looked like, lifted into the gray December sky. Pamela Thornton was not led away in handcuffs. The security officers were not arresting her, a fact she would later try to use to her advantage. Instead, they were simply escorting her, a sterile term for a deeply humiliating process. Each officer, a large man with the weary, impassive face of someone who dealt with the public's worst impulses on a daily basis, had taken one of her arms. Their grip was firm, professional, and utterly non-negotiable, a human forklift removing a problematic pallet. She was marched back up the jet bridge, her designer briefcase banging awkwardly against her hip, her roller bag rattling behind her. The few gate agents still managing the boarding area stared as she passed their faces, a practiced blend of nothing to see here and, oh, it is another one. The sound of the terminal hit her like a wave. In the quiet, pressurized bubble of the aircraft, her world had been small, her voice large. Here in the vast, echoing cavern of LaGuardia's Concourse B, she was instantly just another piece of human noise. The beep of a distant baggage cart, a garbled announcement for a flight to Boston, the crying of a child somewhere in the crowd. It was the same symphony of chaos she had despised an hour earlier, but now she was not passing through it on her way to something better. She had been ejected into it. "She is all yours," the first officer said, depositing her unceremoniously in front of the main Skyward Airlines customer service counter. Not even the gate desk. That was for passengers. This was the desk for problems. The officer dropped her roller bag next to her. It wobbled and tipped over. Neither officer moved to pick it up. They just turned and walked away. Pamela stood there for a full 10 seconds, vibrating with a toxic mixture of rage and humiliation and dawning terror. Her face was a ruin of smeared mascara and blotchy red. Her immaculate navy suit was rumpled, her severe bun coming undone. "Next in line, please." The voice was flat-tired and utterly unimpressed. Pamela looked up. Behind the counter sat Brenda Mitchell, who had walked ahead to take her position. Her name tag was pinned to her navy blue Skyward blazer. Her face was a fortress of professional neutrality. Brenda had seen it all in her 20 years with the airline. She had seen missed wedding tears, drunken bachelor party belligerence, and full-blown meltdowns over lost luggage. She was a gatekeeper of a low-level hell, and her expression gave nothing away. Pamela stumbled to the counter and slammed her briefcase down, scattering a stack of baggage tag receipts. "I need to be on the next flight to Chicago," she demanded. It was not a request. It was an order issued by someone who still believed she had the authority to give them. Brenda looked at Pamela. She looked at the briefcase. She looked at the tear-streaked face. Then, with a slow, deliberate sigh, she turned to her computer. Name Pamela Thornton. Thornton. She spelled it as if Brenda were an idiot. "I am a 100K miler. Top tier. I was unjustly removed from my flight by a rogue pilot. I need to be in Chicago by 3 p.m. This is critical." Brenda's fingers moved over the keyboard. Click, clack, clack, click. The sound was maddeningly slow. On her screen, which Pamela could not see, a large red box had instantly populated over Pamela's reservation. Incident report filed 11:58 a.m. Passenger Thornton Pamela, Flight Skyward 417, Code 7.4 Discriminatory Conduct, Code 11 Failure to comply with crew instruction, Pilot in command action deplaned, Status do not rebook, PNR locked. Brenda read the report. She read Captain Brooks's brief, devastatingly precise summary. Her expression did not change by a single pixel. "I see your flight," she said, her eyes still on the screen. "Skyward 417. Yes, my flight, which I was kicked off of. It has just pushed back from the gate." Brenda continued, ignoring the interruption. "It is on its way to Chicago. She pointed out the great glass window beside the counter. The plane at that very second was indeed rolling toward the taxiway, its engines beginning to whine. Pamela's stomach lurched. "Well, then get me on the next one," she snapped. "There is a 1 p.m. flight, Flight 9002. Put me on that, in first class, as compensation." Brenda's fingers clicked again. "I am afraid Flight 9002 is fully booked. Then the 2 p.m. I do not care. I have to be in Chicago by 3 p.m. Pamela's voice was rising, cracking with panic. "Do you not understand? I have an interview. It is at Meridian Holdings. It is the VP role. It is everything." Brenda finally stopped typing. She swiveled in her chair and gave Pamela her full, undivided, soul-weary attention. "Miss Thornton," she said, her voice dropping into a tone of final bureaucratic judgment. "There is no 1 p.m. flight for you. There is no 2 p.m. flight. There are no flights for you. At all." Pamela blinked. "What? What are you talking about? Just book it." "I cannot just book it." Brenda's voice was patient, almost kind, in the way that people are kind when delivering very bad news. "Captain Brooks, as pilot in command, has per federal and company regulations banned you from Skyward Airlines. Effective immediately." The words did not compute. Pamela stared at her, her mouth opening and closing. "Your ticket has been voided," Brenda continued. "Your frequent flyer status is frozen. All your future bookings have been canceled pending a full executive security review, which can take up to 6 months. You are not permitted to fly on this airline." With a small theatrical flourish, Brenda turned her monitor so Pamela could see it. The screen showed Pamela's name and over it in a flashing red banner, "Passenger banned." "Do not book. Banned." Pamela's voice was barely a whisper. "Banned for what? For having an opinion, for a feeling. You cannot do this. This is America. Get me your supervisor." Brenda leaned forward slightly. Her plastic smile was gone, replaced by the grim, satisfied look of a public-facing employee who finally gets to deliver the bad news. "I am the supervisor, and I am telling you, you are grounded." She straightened in her chair. "Now, if you will please step aside, you are holding up the line." Pamela looked behind her. There was no line. It was just her alone in a sea of indifferent tile. Pamela stumbled away from the counter, her mind a blank, roaring void. Grounded. Banned. Frozen. The words echoed in her skull, colliding with each other, refusing to form coherent meaning. Her rose gold watch read 12:15 p.m. The interview was at 3:00 p.m. She still had time. She could fix this. She could call Meridian, explain what happened, buy herself another hour. Robert Callahan would understand. He had to understand. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She found Robert's name in her contacts. Robert Callahan, Meridian. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to reassemble the Pamela Thornton executive persona. The confident voice, the polished delivery, the certainty that she deserved whatever she was asking for. She stepped into a quieter corner near a charging station, her back to the terminal chaos. She hit call. It rang once, twice. Robert Callahan's office. "This is Amy." The voice was crisp, young, impossibly efficient. "Amy, I need Robert. It is Pamela Thornton. It is an emergency." A pause. The word emergency was a landmine. "Ms. Thornton, Mr. Callahan is preparing for his 3 p.m. candidate review. He is not available to take calls right now." "No." Pamela's voice was too sharp, too desperate. "You do not understand. It is about the 3 p.m. There has been an incident with my airline. I need to tell him I am going to be late." A frosty silence. "Ms. Thornton, Mr. Callahan's schedule is extremely tight. If you are going to be late, just put him on." Pamela was shrieking now, all pretense of professionalism gone. She heard a muffled sound, the assistant's hand over the receiver, then murmured voices. A moment later, Robert Callahan's smooth baritone came on the line. But it was not the warm, collegial voice from their previous calls. It was flat. Cold. "Pamela, where are you? My assistant shows your flight landed 10 minutes ago." He was tracking her. The realization hit her like a bucket of ice water. He was a man who tracked logistics, a man who valued efficiency, precision, follow-through. "Robert, thank God," she said, activating her victim voice, the one she used when a project was late and she needed to deflect blame. "Robert, you are not going to believe what just happened. It is the most unbelievable case of discrimination. This pilot, he threw me off the flight for no reason. There was some kind of misunderstanding and he just—" "Pamela." Robert's voice cut through her rambling like a scalpel. "Stop." She stopped. "Being thrown off a plane," he said slowly, deliberately, "is not an incident like a flat tire. It is not a misunderstanding. There is always a reason. And frankly, none of the possible reasons are acceptable for someone interviewing for a VP position at Meridian Holdings. But it was not my fault. You are either a security risk," Robert continued as if she had not spoken, "a medical risk or a judgment risk. And I cannot in good conscience put a judgment risk in front of our board of directors. No, Robert, please." She was begging now, all pride dissolved. "I can be there. I will rent a car. I will drive. I can make it by. A 6-hour drive. You will miss the entire review." His voice softened slightly, but not with sympathy. With finality. "Pamela, this is not going to work. We have a packed schedule of other highly qualified candidates who managed to make it to Chicago without incident. Robert, do not do this. Please. This job, it means everything to me. It is my entire. It has been done, Pamela." The words landed like a physical blow. "We will be in touch. Do not worry about coming to the office. We will be in touch." And then the most final, brutal sound in the corporate world. Click. The line went dead. Pamela stared at her phone. The 3 p.m. interview was gone. The VP role was gone. The corner office, the expense account, the respect she had been so desperate for. All of it had just evaporated on a dirty terminal carpet. She had lost. In the span of 30 minutes, she had lost her flight, her airline status, and her future. She was stranded at LaGuardia, a place she despised with nowhere to go. And in her pocket, her phone gave a small, insignificant ping. A notification. Tyler Morrison's layover at O'Hare was 45 minutes. He found a seat by his connecting gate, plugged his phone into a charging port, and for the first time really watched the video he had taken. He watched it once, then twice. The audio was chillingly clear. Pamela's venomous whisper. Too many black people. Sophia's stunned professional recoil. And then the main event. Captain Darnell Brooks emerging from the cockpit like an emissary of justice. His voice a calm, deep rumble that cut through the cabin's silence. The entire magnificent speech delivered without raising his voice, without losing his composure for even a second. Tyler watched Pamela's face contort from arrogance to disbelief to pure, unfiltered rage. He watched her stumbling, humiliated walk of shame punctuated by the defiant, spontaneous applause of the entire cabin. Tyler Morrison was not a viral content creator. He was a graphic designer. He was not malicious. But he had a keen, almost painful sense of justice. And this felt important. He felt with a certainty that settled in his gut that the world needed to see 2 things. First, the casual, venomous racism of the passenger. The kind that hides behind whispers and concerns, and security risk, the kind that assumes agreement from anyone who looks like the speaker. Second, the absolute unshakable integrity of the captain. The calm, the authority, the refusal to meet hatred with hatred. Tyler opened his social media account. His follower count was a measly 212, mostly college friends and coworkers. He did not care. He uploaded the clip, a 2-minute, 20-second edit of the most critical moments. He hesitated over the caption, wanting to get it right. He typed, "On my Skyward Air flight, 417 from LGA to ORD today. This woman in 14C, Pamela Thornton, her name was on her briefcase tag, complained to the flight attendant that there were too many black people on the flight and she felt unsafe. She demanded to be moved to first class. She clearly did not expect the pilot to step out. His name is Captain Darnell Brooks. This is how you handle it. Sound on." The applause at the end. Wow. He tagged Skyward Airlines. He tagged several news accounts. He added hashtags, karma, justice, racism. He hit post. Then he put his phone in his pocket, boarded his connecting flight to Denver, and thought nothing more of it. When he landed 3 hours later, his phone was no longer a phone. It was a brick of solid heat vibrating so intensely against his leg that it felt like a low-grade electric shock. He could not even open his notifications. They were cascading faster than his phone's operating system could render them. His post, picked up by an algorithm that recognized conflict and justice, had been a spark in a dry forest. It had been retweeted 10,000 times before his flight had even reached cruising altitude. By the time he landed, it was at 500,000. It had been downloaded, re-uploaded, and was now the #1 trending video on Reddit. A-list celebrities had quote-tweeted it. News organizations were sliding into his DMs. "Mr. Morrison, do you have a moment to talk?" But the true terrifying engine of the internet had already done its work. The name Tyler had provided Pamela Thornton was all it took. Within an hour, internet sleuths had her entire digital life exhumed, her LinkedIn profile, her employer Vertex Media Group, her proud alma mater posts, her professional photo now plastered across thousands of articles and social media threads. She was no longer just a passenger. She was Pamela Thornton, Senior Marketing Director at Vertex Media Group, and the world was watching. Pamela had checked into the LaGuardia Airport Marriott, a monument to beige indifference. The room smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. The bedspread was a dispiriting shade of brown. The window looked out onto a parking garage. For the first hour, she had been a supernova of rage. She paced the room, her immaculate suit now rumpled, her face a tear-streaked ruin. She was the victim here. She had been publicly humiliated. She had been attacked by that pilot, that captain who had no right to speak to her that way. She sat at the small desk, powered up her laptop, and began to draft a letter. It was addressed to the CEO of Skyward Airlines, the FAA, and the New York Times. It was a masterpiece of self-aggrandizing delusion, grievous emotional distress, targeted discrimination by a hostile crew, abject failure to accommodate a high-value customer. She was demanding $5 million in damages and the immediate public firing of Captain Darnell Brooks and the flight attendant, Sophia Reyes. She was so absorbed in her own righteous fury that she did not notice the first few pings from her personal email, but she did notice when she tried to log into her company's Slack channel. "Access denied. Your account has been suspended. Please contact your system administrator." A cold, sharp icicle of fear pierced her rage. That was wrong. That was a mistake. She tried her work email. "This account cannot be found." "No." She whispered, her hands suddenly clammy. "No, no, no." She fumbled for her phone and dialed Greg Patterson's personal cell. Her boss, the man who had sent her on this trip, the man who would surely take her side. He picked up on the first ring, which he never did. He did not say hello. "Pamela." "What the hell did you do?" His voice was a roar, tinny and furious, through the phone's small speaker. "Greg." "Thank God," she cried, the tears starting again. "You will not believe what happened. The airline, I know what happened, Pamela." Greg's voice was shaking now, not with sympathy, but with barely contained rage. "The entire world knows what happened. I have a video on my screen right now, a video of my senior marketing director being applauded as she is kicked off a plane for being a racist. Is that about right? What? What video? I do not. Go to Twitter. Pamela. Go to any news site. Type your own name. Pamela's blood ran cold. We have 4,000 unread emails in the company inbox. Greg continued. The main line has been ringing off the hook for 2 hours. Our social media guy had to lock all the company accounts. The client for the new Q2 campaign, the one you have been working on for 6 months. They just called. They are pausing the contract pending a values review. Greg, I can fix this. It was a misunderstanding. No, you cannot. You are done. The words landed like a hammer. HR is sending the formal termination paperwork to your personal email. Your benefits, your access, your employment. It is all terminated. Effective 2 hours ago. Greg. Please. Do not ever call this number again, Pamela. You have ruined. He trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. Just do not call. Click. Pamela's hands were shaking so badly she could barely type. She opened a browser. She typed her name. And there it was. Her face filmed from behind. The audio, her own voice, crystal clear. Too many black people. She watched horrified as Captain Cole appeared in the video. She watched him dismantle her piece by piece with a calm she now recognized as utterly lethal. She watched her own pathetic shrieking defense, and then she heard it. The applause, the sound of 100 strangers celebrating her total and complete annihilation. The video had 12 million views. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up numbly. Is this Miss Pamela Thornton? The voice was cold, professional, dead. This is Linda Foster from Human Resources at Vertex Media Group. Miss Thornton. This call is to formally notify you that as of 3:42 p.m. Eastern Time, your employment with Vertex Media Group has been terminated for cause, specifically for gross misconduct and violation of the company's Code of Conduct and public-facing ethics policy. Pamela could not speak. Her mouth was full of sand. Your final paycheck will be mailed. We will be sending a COBRA benefits packet to your address on file. Do you have any questions? Thank you. Goodbye. Click. Pamela stared at the beige-patterned wallpaper of the hotel room. It felt like the walls were closing in. The job, her 6-figure salary, her entire career. Gone. But in the back of her mind, a tiny, insane ember of hope still flickered. Meridian. The VP job. Maybe this was a test. Maybe she could still spin this. Maybe she could walk into that interview room and explain, and they would see that she was the victim here, that she had been treated unfairly, that she deserved. Her laptop pinged. A Google News alert she had set up weeks ago. Meridian Holdings. The headline made the room tilt. Meridian Holdings issues statement on viral Skyward Air incident. Denounces candidate. Pamela clicked the link with numb, trembling fingers. It was a formal press release already posted on Meridian's corporate LinkedIn and sent to every major newswire. The letterhead was crisp and professional. The language was carefully crafted. And it destroyed her. Meridian Holdings was made aware this afternoon of a deeply disturbing video filmed aboard a Skyward Airlines flight. We have confirmed that the individual in this video, Ms. Pamela Thornton, was a candidate for a senior executive position at our firm with a final round interview scheduled for today, December 22nd. We wish to be unequivocally clear. The views expressed by Ms. Thornton are abhorrent. They stand in direct opposition to the core values of Meridian Holdings. Our company is built on principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we have zero tolerance for racism, bigotry, or hatred in any form. Ms. Thornton's candidacy has been terminated immediately and permanently. She will not be considered for any role at this company. Ever. Furthermore, we believe that true leadership is exemplified by action, not words. The actions of Captain Darnell Brooks in his professional calm and decisive handling of this incident were a masterclass in integrity and moral courage. In his honor, Meridian Holdings is immediately donating $50,000 to the Equal Justice Initiative. Additionally, we are establishing the Brooks Leadership Award, an annual recognition for individuals who demonstrate exceptional moral courage in professional settings. We believe that the measure of a company is not in how it handles success, but in how it responds to injustice. Today, Meridian Holdings stands with Captain Brooks, with Skyward Airlines, and with everyone who has ever been made to feel unwelcome simply because of who they are. We are better than this, and we will prove it. Pamela read the statement 3 times. Each reading made it worse. The interview she had coveted had become a platform for her public execution. The companies she had been desperate to join had not just rejected her. They had publicly disavowed her, celebrated the man she had tried to destroy, created an award in his name, and donated $50,000 to a civil rights organization in his honor. They had turned her humiliation into their triumph. The ember of hope in her chest flickered and died. With a scream of pure impotent rage, Pamela grabbed her laptop and hurled it at the wall. It hit with a dull, unsatisfying thud and slid to the floor. The screen was now a spiderweb of cracks, but through the wreckage the Meridian Holdings logo still glowed faintly, mocking her. She sank to the floor of the beige hotel room. Her designer suit rumpled her career, destroyed her future in ashes. And 1,200 miles away, Skyward Airlines Flight 417 touched down smoothly at Chicago O'Hare. Captain Darnell Brooks was in the flight operations office finishing his incident report. Passenger 14CP Thornton, he typed, became verbally disruptive and non-compliant, used discriminatory and racist language toward fellow passengers and, by extension, crew, created a hostile environment interfering with pre-flight duties, deplaned per FAR 91.1 Weven and company policy. Port Authority notified and met aircraft. His first officer, Kevin Walsh, clapped him on the shoulder. Captain, that was. That was a textbook pilot in command moment. I have never seen anything like it. Darnell just sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He was not a hero. He was just a man who wanted to do his job in peace. Just another day, Kevin, he said, weary. Just another day. But it was not just another day. And within hours, the whole world would know his name. The ballroom of the Skyward Airlines Training Center was filled to capacity. 300 aviation professionals sat in rows of padded chairs, their attention fixed on the stage at the front of the room. Behind the podium, a massive screen displayed the Skyward Airlines logo alongside 5 words in bold blue letters, the Brooks Protocol. A new standard in crew response. Captain Darnell Brooks stood at the podium, his uniform immaculate, his 4 gold stripes gleaming under the stage lights. He looked out at the sea of faces, pilots and flight attendants and ground crew and executives, and took a breath. He had not asked for any of this. In the 3 months since Flight 417, his life had changed in ways he could never have anticipated. The video had been seen by over 50 million people. He had been interviewed by every major news network. Airlines across the country had adopted new training protocols based on his response. The FAA had cited his handling of the incident as a model for pilot-in-command decision-making. Meridian Holdings had made good on their promise, donating $50,000 to the Equal Justice Initiative in his name and establishing the Brooks Leadership Award. He had received letters from thousands of strangers thanking him for standing up, for showing them what quiet strength looked like. But standing here in front of his peers, he did not feel like a hero. He just felt tired. "I want to start," he said, his deep voice filling the room, "by being honest with you. I am not comfortable being called a hero." A murmur rippled through the audience. On December 22nd, I did my job. That is all. A passenger created a hostile environment on my aircraft. I addressed it. I followed protocol. I protected my crew and my passengers. That is what we are all trained to do. That is what every person in this room would have done. He paused, looking out at the faces before him. But I will tell you what I learned that day. Something I already knew, but that was reinforced in a way I will never forget. He leaned into the microphone. Racism does not just hurt the target. It poisons the entire environment. When someone says too many of them on my aircraft, they are not just insulting the passengers who look like me. They are creating a hostile environment for everyone. They are telling every person in that cabin that some of us are less welcome than others, that some of us do not belong. His voice dropped, becoming more personal. I have been flying for 30 years. Air Force, commercial aviation. I have had people question whether I was qualified. I have had people ask if there was a real pilot available. I have had people look at my uniform and see only my skin color. The room was utterly silent. But here is what I have learned. You cannot control what people think. You can only control how you respond. And when you respond with calm, with authority, with dignity, you take away their power. You show everyone watching that hatred is small, that integrity is bigger. He straightened. On my aircraft, we do not tolerate bigotry, not because it is policy, though it is, not because it is the law, though it is, but because every single person who boards my plane deserves to feel safe, deserves to feel welcome, deserves to be treated as a human being. He looked directly into the audience. That is the job. That has always been the job, and that is what I expect from every single one of you. The applause that followed was thunderous. Darnell stepped away from the podium, accepting handshakes and congratulations as he made his way through the crowd, but his mind was already elsewhere, on the flight home, on his wife Angela, who had supported him through every interview and every sleepless night, on his 2 daughters who had made him a homemade banner that still hung in their living room. Our dad, our hero. He smiled at the thought. He did not feel like a hero. But maybe, just maybe, that is what made him one. Jerome and Jasmine had spent Christmas with Grandma in Chicago. It had been a good Christmas. The best in years, maybe. Hot chocolate by the fire. Presents under the tree. 3 generations of Carters laughing and arguing and loving each other in the way that families do. But the events of December 22nd lingered. 3 months later, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, putting the finishing touches on an essay for her school's Black History Month project. The title displayed in bold letters at the top of the page read, "The Captain Who Stood Up." Jerome looked over her shoulder, reading the final paragraphs. My dad taught me something important on that flight. He taught me that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay quiet and wait. He taught me that as a black person in America, there are moments when speaking up can be dangerous. When your voice, no matter how justified, can be used against you. But Captain Darnell Brooks taught me something else. He taught me that when you have the power to act, you use it, not with anger, not with violence, but with calm, with authority, with dignity. Captain Brooks did not yell at the woman who said those hateful things. He did not lose his temper. He just stood there in his uniform with his 4 gold stripes, and he spoke the truth. Is my presence on this flight a security risk to you? That question will stay with me forever, because it was not just a question. It was a mirror. He held up a mirror and made that woman look at her own ugliness. And then the whole plane clapped. I learned something that day. The hate is loud. It always has been. But it is small. It is smaller than the captain who stood up. It is smaller than the flight attendant who reported it. It is smaller than the 147 passengers who applauded when justice was served. The hate is loud, but it is small. Remember the captain? Jerome finished reading and had to blink away the moisture in his eyes. That is beautiful, baby, he said softly. Really beautiful. Jasmine smiled. My teacher said it might get published in the school magazine, maybe even the district newsletter. It got published in more than that. 3 weeks later, Jasmine's essay was featured in a national youth publication, selected from thousands of entries as the winner of their annual Black History Month writing contest. Jerome framed the magazine cover and hung it in their living room right next to the family photos. Jasmine looked at it every morning before school. Pamela Thornton was no longer an executive. She was a meme. Skyward Pamela, a cautionary tale told in boardrooms and break rooms across the country. Her name had become shorthand for a certain kind of entitled casual racism, the kind that whispers its poison and expects agreement. She had deleted her social media accounts within days of the incident. She had changed her phone number. She had moved out of her Manhattan apartment and into a smaller place in New Jersey, trying to disappear from a world that would not let her. But the internet never forgets. 6 months after Flight 417, she applied for a mid-level marketing position at a small company in Pennsylvania. She had used her maiden name on the application. She had carefully scrubbed any connection to the incident from her resume. It did not matter. Halfway through the interview, the hiring manager's expression changed. He had been looking at his phone under the table, probably checking LinkedIn. I am sorry, he said, his voice cooling noticeably. I just need to ask, are you the Pamela Thornton from the Skyward video? Pamela felt the blood drain from her face. She stood up without answering. She gathered her things. She walked out of the office without looking back. In the parking lot, she sat in her car for a long time, staring at nothing. The woman who had once dreamed of corner offices and VP titles was now unemployable. Every Google search of her name, every background check, every casual inquiry led to the same place. The video, the applause, the face of her own destruction. She had learned too late that some words can never be taken back, and some falls have no bottom. 1 year later. Christmas Eve. Captain Darnell Brooks walked through the terminal of LaGuardia Airport, his uniform crisp, his stride confident. The chaos of the holiday travel rush swirled around him, families reuniting children pointing at decorated Christmas trees, the eternal symphony of announcements and rolling luggage. He was flying Skyward 417 again today. LaGuardia to Chicago. The same route, the same holiday rush. It felt right somehow. At the gate, he saw Sophia Reyes already greeting passengers as they boarded. She had been promoted to senior lead flight attendant after the incident, a recognition of her professionalism and courage. Captain Brooks, she said with a warm smile. Ready for another one? Always, he replied. He walked down the jet bridge and stepped aboard the aircraft, nodding to his first officer, a young woman named Jessica Torres, who reminded him of himself 30 years ago, eager, focused, determined to prove herself. As he made his way toward the cockpit, he passed the rows of passengers settling into their seats. Families with excited children, business travelers tapping at their phones, couples holding hands. Near row 14, a young black boy, maybe 8 years old, stopped in the aisle and stared at Darnell's uniform with wide, amazed eyes. "Are you the pilot?" the boy asked. Darnell smiled. "I am." "That is so cool." The boy's voice was filled with wonder. "I want to fly planes when I grow up." Darnell knelt down to the boy's level, meeting his eyes. "Then you will," he said. "Work hard, stay focused, and do not ever let anyone tell you that you cannot." The boy's mother, standing just behind him, smiled and mouthed, "Thank you." Darnell stood, straightened his uniform, and continued toward the cockpit. As he settled into the captain's seat, as he began the familiar ritual of the pre-flight checklist, as the door sealed and the engines hummed to life, he felt a sense of peace. Not because of the fame or the awards or the training videos that now bore his name, but because he was doing what he loved. Flying people safely from one place to another, protecting his crew, upholding a standard of dignity and respect that every passenger deserved. The hate was loud. It always would be. But it was small. And every day, in small ways, and large good people were proving that it did not have to win. Sophia's voice came over the intercom, warm and welcoming. "Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome aboard Skyward Airlines Flight 417 with service to Chicago O'Hare. On behalf of Captain Darnell Brooks and the entire crew, we would like to wish you a very happy holiday season. We are grateful you chose to fly with us today." Outside the window, Christmas lights twinkled in the terminal. The plane began to taxi toward the runway, and as the engines roared to life and the aircraft lifted into the gray December sky, carrying passengers toward family and home and hope, Captain Darnell Brooks smiled. Just another flight. Just another day. Just another chance to show the world what integrity looked like. What did you think of Captain Brooks's response? Was the avalanche of consequences Pamela faced justified? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. It only takes a second, but it helps more people see stories like this one. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story of justice and karma. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend. Post it on your social media. Let the world know that quiet dignity can change everything. Until next time, stay kind, stand tall, and never underestimate the power of standing your ground with grace.